and that was got rid of it by the time the Marxists and Leninists and other branches of communism turned on them. You know, the famous example is the sailors from the battleship Potemkin. Welcome to part two. Marxism is responsible for the deaths of 300 million people and the slavery of many more. When the cooperative movement provides egalitarian models for firms where every worker owns shares, where it could be applied also to preserve such things in the modern sense as the Amazon rainforest by giving shares to the citizens of Brazil directly in the modern context, or the social market, why choose Marxism? That was what I was asserting while I was watching the video. It undermines society from the relations between the sexes, that is Marxism I'm talking about, to the family and nations and Western means of systematic learning. And in relation to the sexes, I'm talking about the strand of Marxist extreme feminism now, which portrays women always as victims, which if you've seen, I think a channel's called Mariella the Sex, is in terms of male and female relations, she was critiquing that brand of Marxist feminism because she said women today, of course, have, and traditionally in Western societies, have had a lot of ability to learn and become quite powerful members of society, you know. And a woman's, in Western culture, a woman's word is just as good as a man's in court, for instance, which of course it's not in some brands of Judaism and some brands of Islam. You know, we're talking about wide means in those in those terms as well. So you know, don't get tribal on the terms. I mean, to give you an early example, I mean, although women were subjugated in Athens, in Sparta, women were equals to men in some respects, and of course in Viking or Anglo-Saxon culture, particularly, women were seen as more likely to be landowners and in the sort of civic responsibility of administrators than men. You know, of course, men held the military positions, but we're talking about a time when there wasn't rifles that women could become excellent snipers with or anything like that. It was a muscle-based system of warfare, as sophisticated as missile weapons were, but that was what it was about in those days, you know. So I've digressed. So Marxism undermines society from the relations between the sexes to the family and nations and Western means of systematic learning, because of Marxists, of course, particularly in Cambodia, killed intellectuals, but there are other examples, many examples within the Soviet Union and China. Marxism is the religion of an anti-society, not in accordance with nature, as Stoics would say. Marx and Lenin were funded by capitalists, some with feudalistic crime family connections. His stage theory wanted capitalism to reach its zenith. That's an extremely important thing to understand about Marxist stage theory. So he wanted capitalism to reach its zenith. He was not a socialist in that regard. Whereas the English cooperative movement was nationalist in the sense that nationalism and society were seen as one term that could be blended in between each other. Particularly if you've read The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist, England for the English is a book he often states in that to give a sort of a social democracy within a nation. So the cooperative movement, social socialism. But you may even be able to say that Tom Paine was a socialist because he stressed rather than Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson stressed more the liberty and property as natural rights, whereas Thomas Paine stressed liberty and equality in balance under the rule of law, which is, I subscribe to both Epicurean ideas in one sense, even though I'm a Stoic. So the socialists believe in society, not the end stage of Marxism, that is the same as the feudal ultra-conservative capitalism equals an atomistic anti-society, right? There's no social connections between people. Now, Marxists will say, of course, that they are trying to foster an idea of solidarity between people without, in the end stage of Marxism, without a state. But I'll try, which is how they try to infiltrate the purely anarchist movements, right? Which, of course, in itself has a bad connotations to that term, but of course the original anarchists were mostly pacifists. I continue on with my assertions here. The Stoics would turn in their graves to see such disrespect for the logos, which is the Stoic idea of reason running through everything. They even believed God was subject to reason, his own reason, and the general synthesis of different ideas and occurrences in nature. So the Stoics were turning in their graves to see such a disrespect for the logos by Marxists, for a disrespect of society and nations, which build the fabric of a cosmopolitanism of reason between nations, communities and individuals. If people who read Mein Kampf and agree with it are rightfully to be challenged because of that belief system, because the author of that book was responsible for the genocide of 20 million, how can it be acceptable for Marxists to be spoke of, or Marx to be spoke of, in reverence for when he is killed, his ideas are killed, and the people who followed him in his ideas are killed 300 million people in a genocide throughout Eurasia and other places, and counting, as China kills 1 million people per year, every year, and has continued to this day. So this YouTube user then goes to my channel, looks at my channel and sees that I've got some World War II videos on there. Buried in one thing about a journalist who wrote a book, they start talking about the events of World War II and downplaying certain aspects, and then he, by association, that I had that on my channel, I am somehow supposed to be agreeing with that, you know. I have never denied any genocide on my channel. I'm against genocide and I will continue to be. And then he also talks about other memes about Middle Eastern culture, memes from Middle Eastern culture, as though I was somehow guilty for that because I understood them.